My daughter and I put on the best act of our lives that Saturday morning, and by the time the sun came up on Sunday, the man she almost married walked straight into everything we had set for him. But I need to take you back to Friday evening, because that's when everything changed. The rehearsal dinner was at Carmine's, a family Italian place over on Westfield Avenue that my daughter had loved since she was 12 years old. Red checkered tablecloths, candles in old wine bottles. The kind of place where you can hear 3 conversations at once and somehow still feel like the room belongs to you. She had picked it herself, said she wanted the night before her wedding to feel warm, not fancy. That was her, always more concerned with how people felt than how things looked. I had arrived early to check on the seating arrangement. My daughter, she is the most organized person I have ever known, gets that from her mother, had left a laminated diagram with the hostess, every seat labeled. I smiled looking at it. 51 years old, and she still color-coded things. I stood near the back hallway waiting for the hostess to finish a phone call, so I could confirm a detail about the vegetarian plates, and that's when I heard him. The door to the small side room, the one Carmine's used for private parties, was pulled nearly shut, but not latched. I wasn't trying to listen. I want to be clear about that. I was standing 5 feet away with my hands in my coat pockets, thinking about whether I had remembered to pick up my dry-clean suit from the car. And then his voice came through the gap in that door like something cold moving through the room. She doesn't suspect a thing, man, not a single thing. That was my future son-in-law's voice. I had heard it at my dinner table every Sunday for 2 years. I knew it the way you know a sound that has become part of your house. I did not move. Bro, you sure about this? That was a different voice. Younger. Someone I didn't recognize. 100%. She makes good money. Her dad's sitting on a paid-off house in Montclair and a retirement account that's got to be at least $800,000 in it. I did the math. There was a pause. I put my hand flat against the wall. What about you actually liking her? He laughed. It wasn't a cruel laugh exactly. That almost would have been easier. It was the relaxed laugh of a man who had already decided something and was past caring. She's fine. She's sweet. But I got $43,000 in credit card debt and my car payment is 3 months behind. You do the math, Derek. I stood in that hallway for what felt like a long time but was probably 30 seconds. $43,000. My daughter's name wasn't even what he said he loved. He said she's fine. She's sweet. Like he was describing someone he'd sat next to on a train. I walked back toward the front of the restaurant slowly. The hostess was off the phone now and said something to me, but I don't remember what I said back. I went to the men's room, ran cold water over my wrists the way my father used to tell me to do when I needed to think straight, and I looked at myself in that mirror for a long time. My daughter's name is Beverly. She goes by Bev. She has her mother's eyes and my stubbornness, and she worked for 6 years to get her pharmacist license and then went back and got a second certification in clinical nutrition because she said she wanted to understand the whole person, not just a prescription. She is the kind of person who calls to check on her friends when they go quiet on social media. She sends cards in the mail. Actual cards with actual stamps. She had been engaged to this man. His name was Scott Aldridge, for 14 months. I had shaken his hand and welcomed him into our family. I had taken him fishing twice. I had told my brother in Atlanta, I think this one's the real thing, James. I think she's finally found her guy. I dried my hands. I checked my phone. It was 6:48 in the evening. The wedding was at 2 o'clock the next afternoon. I had exactly 19 hours. The dinner went fine, or at least I made sure it looked that way. I laughed when I was supposed to laugh. I gave a short toast and I kept my voice even, and I said the things a father says, about watching your child grow into someone who makes you proud, about welcoming new family, about love being the thing that holds everything else together. Scott sat across the table and smiled at me. He had a good smile. I will give him that. He was good at the smile. My daughter caught my eye during the toast and mouthed, "Thank you, Daddy," and I had to look down at my glass for a second before I could finish the sentence I was saying. I called my brother James from the parking lot at 9:30, while everyone else was saying their goodbyes at the door. I told him what I had heard, word for word. James is 3 years older than me, and he spent 22 years as a detective with the Newark PD before he retired. If there is a person on this earth I trust to help me think clearly when I cannot think clearly, it is James. He was quiet while I talked. When I finished, he said, "You got your phone with you right now?" "Yes." "Does it record audio?" "It does." "Good. Before anything else happens tomorrow, you get that man on tape saying something close to what he said tonight. You understand me? You need something that isn't just your word. You need something you can play. James, the wedding is at 2. Then you better be up early." I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the dark in my house and I thought about my daughter in her hotel room across town. Probably not sleeping either. Probably excited and nervous the way you're supposed to be the night before you get married. I thought about her mother, Patricia, who passed from ovarian cancer 9 years ago, and how Patricia had made me promise in the hospital in those last weeks that I would look out for Beverly. "She trusts too easily," Patricia had said. "She sees the best in people, and that's beautiful, and you have to make sure nobody takes advantage of that." I had held my wife's hand and told her I would. I meant it. I had meant it every day since. I was in the hotel lobby where Scott and his groomsmen were staying by 7:15 in the morning. I had texted him the night before, casual as I could make it, said I wanted to grab breakfast and give him something before the ceremony. Told him I had a family pocket watch that had belonged to my grandfather, that I wanted to pass down, that it was a private thing just between us men. He texted back immediately, "That's really thoughtful, sir. See you at 7:30. He came down to the lobby in dark jeans and a grey pullover, hair still damp from the shower. He looked rested. He looked completely at ease. I had my phone in my left breast pocket with the voice memo app already running. We sat in 2 chairs near the window. I had the watch ready. It is real. It was my grandfather's. I had not lied about that. I handed it to him and watched him turn it over in his hands and say all the right things about it. And I thought, this man is very good at saying all the right things. We talked for a few minutes about a day, about the weather, about the venue. And then I said, casually, like it was just conversation, "I want to make sure you're set, son. Financially, I mean. Beverly mentioned you had some things you were working through. I want you to know that if you and she need a bridge loan to get settled, I'm in a position to help. I just need to understand the situation clearly." Something shifted in his eyes. Just briefly. And then the smile came back. "I appreciate that, sir. Honestly. I've got some credit card debt I've been dealing with, about 40,000 or so. It's been stressful. I didn't want Beverly worrying about it before the wedding." "Of course," I said. "That's understandable. How did it get to that point, if you don't mind me asking?" He leaned back. He was comfortable now. I could see it. He thought I was offering him money. He thought this was going well. And he started talking about some bad investments, about a business idea that hadn't worked out, about how once you're in the hole with credit card interest, it just keeps climbing. He talked for almost 4 minutes. He did not once mention what he planned to do about it himself. He mentioned Beverly's salary twice. I stopped the recording in my pocket. "Well," I said, "let's get you married." He shook my hand and thanked me and went back upstairs. I sat there for a moment with my grandfather's watch in my hand. It had stopped working years ago. The glass face was a little fogged. I thought about the man who had carried it and what he would have made of all this. And I closed my fingers around it and put it back in my pocket. My brother James was waiting in the parking lot outside. I played him the recording through my car speakers. He listened without speaking, then said, "That's enough." "Now what do you want to do?" I told him. He was quiet for a second. "You want to do it that way? In front of everyone?" "I want her to know," I said, "and I want the people who love her to know what she was almost walking into, and I want him to have nowhere to hide." James nodded slowly. "All right," he said. "Then here's how we do it." The ceremony was at St. Sovereignty, Matthew's Episcopal over on Clinton Avenue, the church Beverly and I had attended since she was 4 years old. The pastor, Reverend Aldrich, had baptized my daughter and confirmed her and presided over her mother's funeral. He knew our family. When I called him at 9 in the morning and asked if I could meet him privately before the ceremony, he said, "Come right now." I sat with Reverend Aldrich in his office behind the sanctuary, and I played him the recording, and I told him everything. He listened with his hands folded on his desk and his expression very still. And when I finished, he said, "What do you need from me?" I need 5 minutes, I said. Before the vows. Just 5 minutes. He looked at me for a long time. This will change everything for her. I know. She may not thank you right away. I know that too. He nodded once. 5 minutes, he said. I called Beverly at 10:30. I told her I needed to see her before the ceremony. Just the two of us, at the hotel. I did not tell her everything on the phone. I only told her that something had happened that she needed to know about, and that I was her father, and I needed her to trust me. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "How bad?" "Bad enough," I said. "But I'm going to be right there with you." I heard her breathe in. Then she said, "Come now." I will not describe in detail what it looked like to watch my daughter listen to that recording. I will only say this. She sat on the edge of the hotel bed in her bathrobe with her hair half done, and she did not cry. She went completely still, the way a person goes still when the ground shifts under them and they are trying to figure out which way to fall. Her hands were flat on her knees. She listened to his voice say her salary twice. She listened to him not mention her name. When it ended, she looked up at me and said, "How long have you known?" "Since last night." She nodded slowly. She looked at the wall. She said, very quietly, "I picked out curtains with him." I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say to that. Then she straightened up. I watched her do it. Watched her pull something up from somewhere deep and set her jaw and look at me and say, "What do you want to do, Dad?" "That's up to you," I said. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you." She thought for a moment. Then she said, "I want everyone to know. I don't want him to walk away from this like it was just a quiet breakup. I don't want him to do this to someone else." I said, "Then here's what I've arranged." The church was full, 83 people, which I know because my daughter had spent 3 weeks on that guest list. Both sides of the family. Friends from her pharmacy, her college roommate who had flown in from Portland, Scott's family in the front pews on the right side, his mother in a lavender dress, his brother who was the best man looking pleased with himself. Beverly walked down that aisle on my arm. She was in a dress. She was beautiful, and she was steady as I have ever seen her. We reached the altar. Scott was standing there looking at her the way he had practiced looking at her, and I stepped back to take my seat, and Reverend Aldrich looked out over the congregation and said, "Before we begin, Beverly's father has asked to say a few words. Bernard, please." Scott turned his head toward me with a small, puzzled smile. I stood and I walked to the front of the church. I took out my phone. I said, "I love my daughter more than I can say, and I made a promise to her mother 9 years ago that I would protect her." I paused. "Last night I heard something I need everyone in this room to hear." I pressed play. "She doesn't suspect a thing, man. Not a single thing." The church went absolutely silent. Not the quiet of a room waiting for something. The silence of a room understanding something. "She's fine. She's sweet. But I got $43,000 in credit card debt, and my car payment is 3 months behind." Scott's mother made a sound. His brother stood up and then sat back down. Scott himself had gone the color of old concrete. Then the second recording, his own voice, relaxed, talking about Beverly's salary like it was a line item on a spreadsheet. I stopped the audio. I looked at Scott. And I said, "You don't get to have her." Beverly stepped forward then, and this is the moment I will carry with me for the rest of my life. She reached up and she unclipped her veil, folded it neatly over her arm like she was setting down something she had been carrying too long. And she looked at Scott and said in a clear, steady voice, "I want you to leave, right now. And I want you to know that I feel sorry for you, because whoever you were trying to become, it wasn't worth it." He left. He walked down the side aisle with his brother behind him, and he did not look back, and the doors of the church closed behind them with a sound like a period at the end of a sentence. For a moment, nobody moved. And then Beverly's college roommate started crying from the third pew, and somebody else started clapping. It was my brother James. I knew his hands, and then the whole room was on its feet. All these people who had come to witness a marriage and were witnessing something else entirely. Something harder and more real. Beverly turned to me and I opened my arms and she walked into them and she pressed her face against my shoulder the way she had when she was 7 years old and she said, very quietly, into my coat. You kept your promise. I held her. I didn't say anything. The veil was still folded over her arm between us, white silk against her wedding dress, and the candles on the altar were still lit, and Reverend Aldrich was standing quietly at his pulpit, giving us all the time we needed. We spent that afternoon at Carmine's. Not the rehearsal dinner version, but the real thing. The version that happens when plans fall apart, and the people who love you decide to stay anyway. Someone called the restaurant and they cleared the back room, and Bev's friends brought the reception flowers from the venue, and we sat there for 4 hours, and we ate, and we told stories about Beverly's mother, and we laughed more than I expected to. My daughter sat at the center of it all in her wedding dress, and she didn't look broken. She looked like herself, more herself maybe than she had been in 14 months. Somewhere around 8 o'clock she squeezed my hand across the table and said, "I want to go to Charleston. I was going to go for the honeymoon. I'm still going." "Good," I said. "Will you come with me?" I looked at my daughter, 51 years old and still the most important person in my world. "Yes," I said. "I'll come." 3 months have passed since that Saturday. Scott's mother sent Beverly a handwritten letter of apology. Beverly called her, and they talked for an hour. I don't know everything that was said. Bev told me it helped, and that was enough. I still have my grandfather's watch. I carry it in my left pocket most days, the way I always have. It still doesn't run. But I keep it because my grandfather told me once that a stopped watch isn't broken. It just decided on a moment worth remembering. I think about Patricia. I think about her hands in mine in that hospital room, and the promise I made. I think I kept it. I hope she knows. Don't let anyone rush you past your instincts. When something feels wrong at a moment that's supposed to feel right, that feeling is telling you something. It won't always be comfortable to listen. But the people who love you, really love you, will still be standing there when you do. I still carry that watch in my left pocket, the one that stopped running years ago. Some mornings I take it out and just hold it for a second before I start the day, and I think about what my father used to say, that the choices a man makes in a quiet moment, when nobody's watching and there's no applause coming, those are the ones that define him. What Scott did wasn't complicated. He looked at my daughter and saw a number. He calculated her salary, estimated my net worth, added it up, and decided she was worth the performance. And for 14 months he performed beautifully. That's not passion, that's arithmetic, and arithmetic always eventually shows its work. I've thought a lot about why it went the way it did. Not just Scott's choices, but mine too. I could have pulled Beverly aside quietly and let the whole thing dissolve without a scene. I could have paid him off. I could have done what a lot of men would have done and simply made the problem disappear in a way that protected everyone's feelings, including his. But I kept thinking about what my daughter said when I played her that recording. She didn't cry. She went still. And then she said, "I want everyone to know. That wasn't anger talking. That was character. That was a woman who had been lied to, deciding that the truth was worth more than her comfort. I wasn't going to be the one to talk her out of that. Doing right by someone you love, even when it costs you. That's not a philosophy I read somewhere. It's something I learned by watching people who had it and people who didn't." Scott had every advantage going into that relationship. He was charming. He was presentable. He knew exactly what to say. What he didn't have was the thing that actually holds a life together, the willingness to act with integrity when it would have been easier not to. And without that, nothing else he had was ever going to be enough. That's not punishment. That's just how it works. Beverly is the smartest person I know, and I don't mean that in an academic sense, though she is that too. I mean she has the kind of intelligence that shows up under pressure, the kind that goes quiet and still when the ground shifts instead of falling apart. Sitting on that hotel bed in her bathrobe, listening to the voice of a man she had planned a life with, reduce her to a financial calculation, she did not unravel. She thought. And then she decided. That kind of thinking, the kind that stays clear when everything is falling, that's what actually protects you in this life. And Beverly got up. She walked into that church. She stood at that altar in her dress, and she looked at him, and she said what needed to be said. And she meant every word of it. I have been her father for 51 years, And that was the moment I was most proud of her. Not because she was strong the way people mean when they say someone is strong after something terrible, but because she refused to shrink. She stood in the full size of herself, and she let the truth take up as much space as it needed. I kept my promise to her mother that day. Not perfectly, not without cost, but I kept it. And Beverly went to Charleston, and she came back with sunburn on her shoulders and something settled behind her eyes that hadn't been there before. That's enough. That's more than enough.